One of the things I want to talk about before we really start unpacking some of the tactics is that at this exact moment in time, it is a really challenging moment when it comes to money, finances, the job market. If you really identify with that sense that I'm
Yeah.
scared I can't get a job, I'm scared about being able to make it. Where do you start, Morgan?
I think if somebody says, "I'm scared about my money,"
Yeah.
that's their truth, and you have to empathize with that. If someone were to say, "It is worse now than it was for previous generations," that I think you can push back on a little bit more. And you can
How
say,
so?
because you could look back at how people lived in the 1950s, in the 1960s, in the 1970s, and say, "Look, I empathize with how scared you are today. It is probably not true that we are worse off today than we were in previous generations." One thing that I've always thought is very interesting is if you ask most Americans, when was peak middle class prosperity? When were the glory days? But what's interesting is that if you looked at how the average middle class family lived in the 1950s and who we are aspiring to want to go back to, it is a quality of life that we would consider abject poverty today. I mean, the average middle class family house in the 1950s was about 800 square feet for two bedrooms for you and your four kids, no air conditioning, no washer and dryer, no go on down the list of what it was like back then. They were very happy. They were very content with it back then, but it's not a level of contentment that you would have today. And so a lot of what is with finance is that it's not necessarily that these things will make you happier. If you were to have more money, it's not necessarily that you would be happier. And that when most people think, "Oh, if only I had a bigger house, then I'd be happy." And when you imagine yourself taking a fancy vacation, you imagine how happy you would be. The emotion that you're actually thinking about is not happiness, it's contentment. And so when you realize that what you're actually chasing is contentment, you're not chasing more, you're chasing I just want to be happy with what I have. The first step